We have some huge breaking news right now. Canada is threatening to retaliate against the United States by imposing its own tariffs on Canadian products that the United States imports. According to the Associated Press, an individual in the Canadian government spoke anonymously and said that Canada is evaluating which products to slap its own tariffs on. This comes after Donald Trump's threat of a 25% tariff on all imported goods from Canada. Now, you guys may not know this, but Canada sends a lot of aluminum, steel, timber, wood. A number of the construction projects that we work on here in the United States relies on Canadian goods. In addition, Canada sends in a number of dairy products that us as Americans rely on as well. And this comes after Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, essentially said that if Trump were to impose 25% tariffs, that there will be retaliation in the form of tariffs on Mexican goods on the Mexican side. But now it looks like Canada may do the same. Comment below your thoughts, spread the word, and as always, follow along to stay up to date on all the news that you need to know. Breaking news right now, Canada is threatening to retaliate against the United States.
So this is crazy. For those of you that follow me, you'll know that I live on an isolated First Nation in Ontario, right on the Minnesota-Manitoba-Ontario intersection. Most people don't know this, but the hydro, or the electricity that we get here in our First Nation, comes from America. We're at the end of the line, so that's one of the reasons we lose power a lot. But originally, it starts in Manitoba. So it goes from Canada into America, back into Canada to service our First Nation, as well as other communities in the general region here at Angle Inlet. It's a geographical oddity. Look it up. So our electricity could be seeing tariffs going into America, then back into Canada to us? Yikes.
Justin Trudeau wants to pass a bill that will aid Canadians for at least a little bit in making their lives easier and to reducing the costs of everyday goods like groceries. And it's a good thing, right? I think we can all agree that lower prices around Christmas would be awesome. When that bill came up to be voted on, guess what party said no? Yeah, it's the Conservatives. I know it's obvious. But also guess what leader of that party didn't show up to even vote? Pierre Poilievre. Now, why did he do that? So when it comes back up in the future, he can just say, I didn't vote against it, hoping that we're too blind to see that you didn't vote against it because you didn't show up, so you could later have some plausible deniability. He wants us to be blind to the truth. He wants you to be so confused with his 3-word slogans. He wants you to be gullible. Don't be gullible, all right? The only thing this man wants, and it's not for Canadians to have a better life, it's so that he can have power to make more money with the big companies that he's in bed with, all right? Have the day you deserve.
I'm not hearing enough people talk about the fact that when Trump's tariffs are enacted, companies will use tariffs as a cover to continue to price gouge us. We know for a fact that they use inflation as a cover while posting record profits. When people were complaining about Kamala not having a strong economic policy or not standing up for the working class, they were wrong because she consistently talked about going after corporations who were price gouging. Corporations are going to be corporations. They are going to continue to prioritize profits. And guess what? That means that when the cost of doing business increases, they're going to be passing those costs on to customers. But on top of that, they're also going to be using any tactic to continue to keep prices high.
The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made his way down to Florida to have dinner with Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago because Trump had made a bold statement saying that they would put a 25% tariff on imports from Canada. And well, his economy, if you actually looked at the numbers, saw that, and some things already started going a little haywire. And Trudeau wants to get in front of this right now because from his point of view, it looks like they're being punished, or as he said yesterday, you're punishing Canadians and Americans because this will cause the price of everything to go up. And so Trudeau wanted to go down there to have a conversation face to face so that Donald Trump understands what he's saying. Now, we really don't know much about what happened during that conversation during dinner last night, but we do know that Trump did have a lot of important people in his cabinet there so that they can have a full conversation. We know that Trump's national security advisor, his commerce secretary, and the interior secretary were all there with their family so that they can all discuss this in person, which in a way, I mean, that's a good group of people to have there so that they can understand the gravity of what Trump said. Prior to this, though, Trudeau did have not a press conference, but gave a mini interview in which he said, our responsibility is to point out that in this way, he would actually not just be harming Canadians who work so well with the United States, he'd actually be raising prices for American citizens as well as hurting American industry and businesses. And since Donald Trump has a lot of first-day agendas, one including putting tariffs on things, Trudeau wanted to make sure that Trump understood everything that he was doing before it happened. Meaning that if you do this, things are going to get expensive, even though you ran on things, that things would get cheaper. Well, let me know what you guys think about these tariffs in the comment section below.
I'm going to explain to all of you guys how bad the economic impact of the tariffs that Donald Trump is proposing can be for Canadians. When you have a tariff, that means that export, meaning whatever I'm selling from Canada into the US, just became 25% more expensive. It's going to impact heavy sectors like automotive, energy, agriculture, and wood, which is already being destroyed with a lot of tariffs that we pay. But because those are massive exports of Canada, those industries are going to be so heavily impacted that it's going to result in layoffs. The demand for those products in the US is going to go down because that cost just went up. So instead, Americans are going to look for those products locally within their markets instead of importing it from Canada. Think of it this way. Would you rather have eggs locally for $1 or would you have it for $1.25 coming from the US? You're obviously going to pick the cheaper option. So economists have predicted that it's going to roughly translate into a loss of 2% of our GDP. I think that's very conservative. I think it's probably going to be more like 3 to 4%. When you're in that territory, by definition, that is fundamentally 100% undeniably a recession. So we will enter as a country into a recession, but wait, things get worse. The thing that drives the dollar is demand and supply. There isn't going to be much demand for our dollar anymore, and our dollar will continue to depreciate further because there's going to be less exports. When our dollar gets hit, and it's going to get hit much worse than it's already being hit, and another primary driver of that is the interest rates, because our interest rates right now are at 3.75%, and in the US is 4.75%. That means if I invest money by buying bonds or government, but something safe, I actually get a better return in the US because they are 1% higher. With that interest rate being higher in the US, they have more demand for their dollars. So that's part of why their dollar is so much higher than ours right now, comparatively speaking. The other issue is when we import things into the country, which we do quite a lot of, those imports are going to cost us a lot more money because you're going to pay for those imports and you'll be invoiced in US dollars. Think of it this way. If I have a company based in the US and you want to buy my product, I'm not invoicing you in Canadian dollars. I'm invoicing you in US dollars. And so the cost of things are going to go up, which will arguably then increase inflation as well. It's a nightmare scenario. Lower GDP, we're in a recession, our dollar gets devalued, the cost of imports is more, and we'll have job losses. And instead, Trudeau wants you to focus on a holiday tax for 2 months and raise the carbon tax by 18% in April. Unreal.